It's really lovely to be here today. I'm very excited to talk about something that is so near and dear to my heart. And I also think it's great that we talked about food, we talked about medicine, and now we can talk about textiles and clothing, which you might be thinking, why are we talking about clothing? And just share with you quickly, I actually started in the organic farming movement. Thank you. And I was working on an organic farm in Guelph, and I was talking a lot about sustainability, and I was growing food for people, and we were having all these really interesting conversations, but we never talked about fashion. We never talked about clothing. And I thought that this was my watershed moment, actually, is to realize that clothing is an agricultural product, and how we grow our clothes can have an immense impact on the environment. So it was in that context of growing food that I came across the blog of Rebecca Burgess. And she's this incredible woman who's living in California. She's a natural dyer and a weaver. And she started to think about the origin of her clothes. And she was horrified when she started looking into what goes into making polyester and acrylic and things that we kind of take for granted. The fashion industry is one of the most polluting industries in the world, and I encourage all of you to look into this if you want to be really depressed. But if you want a really positive story, then we'll talk about Fibersheds. So Rebecca endeavored to create a wardrobe from her bioregion. So being a weaver and a spinner and a natural dyer, she thought, you know what, I can probably make my clothing by myself. I could probably do this locally, but that's no fun. I want to work with other people. So she sought out ranchers and the local mills, and she really created a supply chain that hasn't existed in North America since the 60s, really. And from that project, she started an organization, and she grew a movement. And this is just an example of some of the clothing that came out of that Fibershed that she started in her own backyard. And there's many examples of this. They have cotton in California, so they're really lucky in that sense. So most of what you can see is cotton, but there's also some wool blends in there. And then all the colors too are either the natural color of cotton, because not many people know this, but cotton is not just white. It comes in green and brown and a whole host of other colors. So that cotton probably isn't dyed. And then the blue would come from indigo, which is a gorgeous plant. And the Fibershed is, it's built on this soil-to-soil system. So it's a Fibershed is this geographic region from which you source everything that you need to create your clothing and textiles. And we think of things in terms of this soil-to-soil. You start at the top with where the sheep is, and that would be the farm. And so there's all these regenerative practices that we've been talking about this weekend. And I noticed today with the agroforestry, there was a picture of the sheep in between the currents, and it said lamb and mutton. And I thought, why are we not talking about textiles too? I mean, that should say lamb and wool. So when we're thinking about all these different systems, we can incorporate wool into them. And so working our way around the circle, we start at the farm, and then we move on to the mill, and then we can talk about the designers that would be making these garments, which would have, you could consider them to be heirlooms. They could be passed on to generations, and then at the end of their life cycle, they can actually be put into the compost, and they'll deteriorate, and then they'll nourish the soil, and then the whole cycle can start again, which is the complete antithesis of the current fashion industry.